The planet Zargon Prime was a world sculpted by water, not the gentle, life-giving rain of terrestrial planets, but crushing, all-encompassing oceans under the baleful gaze of twin suns. Here, in the crushing depths, the Zargonian Tribunal held dominion. Imagine, if you will, a species evolved for absolute efficiency. Picture beings resembling sleek bioluminescent squids, but possessed of rigid exoskeletons and an unwavering devotion to order. This was the Zargonian ideal, a society governed by the Great Directive, an immutable code of conduct etched into the very bedrock of their civilization. The tribunal chambers themselves were a marvel of bioengineering and grim practicality. Colossal pressure-sealed caverns carved from the living coral of the seabed, pulsed with an eerie ethereal light. Tiered platforms ascended towards a central dais where the Grand Explicator, the Supreme Judge, resided, his many eyes gleaming with cold, unwavering judgment. Every Zargonian, from the lowest sanitation drone to the highest-ranking inquisitor, understood their place. Their lives were dictated by flowcharts and regulatory subclauses. Deviation was not merely discouraged, it was unthinkable, a glitch in the otherwise perfect matrix of Zargonian society. The legal system was a labyrinthine construct of precedents, addendums, and subsections, meticulously maintained and endlessly debated. Justice was not about morality or fairness, but about adherence to the Great Directive. Guilt or innocence was determined by a complex algorithm that weighed the infraction against the societal cost. Their obsession with protocol extended to every facet of their lives. Meals were consumed in precise sequences, mating rituals were codified in elaborate dances, and even grief was expressed through designated periods of silent contemplation. Emotions were seen as inefficient, a dangerous variable that could disrupt the smooth functioning of the collective. The tribunal existed to enforce this rigid order. They were the guardians of the Great Directive, the arbiters of Zargonian law. Their judgments were swift, their punishments severe, and their dedication absolute. Those brought before the tribunal faced a system designed to eliminate any ambiguity. The accused were subjected to layers of scrutiny, their thoughts analyzed, their memories dissected. There was no room for doubt, no tolerance for excuses. But little did the Zargonians know their unwavering faith in the Great Directive was about to be tested by something they could never have predicted: the chaotic unpredictability of a single, unassuming human. The Zargonians believed themselves to be at the pinnacle of galactic civilization, their society a testament to the power of order and logic. They saw other species as either inferior, useful for resource extraction, or simply irrelevant. They never encountered a species like humanity. And then there was Harold Finch. He was, to put it mildly, out of place. Imagine a creature dredged from some forgotten corner of the galaxy, utterly devoid of the Zargonian sense of decorum or purpose. That was Harold. He sat in the detention alcove, a transparent bubble filled with breathable atmosphere, looking profoundly bored. His attire, a faded t-shirt depicting some terrestrial band called the Grateful Dead, and cargo shorts that had clearly seen better days, was a blatant affront to Zargonian sensibilities. It was as if he had deliberately chosen the most offensive garments imaginable. His posture was equally appalling. Instead of maintaining the respectful, submissive stance expected of the accused, he slouched against the bubble wall, legs crossed, at the ankles, arms folded behind his head. He even seemed to be chewing something, a habit strictly forbidden within the tribunal chambers. The Zargonian observers were baffled. Was this defiance, ignorance, or some form of elaborate psychological warfare they couldn't comprehend? Their analytical algorithms sputtered, unable to process the sheer incongruity of the situation. Harold's expression was one of mild curiosity mixed with a hint of amusement. He seemed less like a prisoner facing judgment and more like a tourist, observing a particularly strange aquarium exhibit. Occasionally he would scratch his beard, a tangled mess of reddish-brown hair that further offended the Zargonian aesthetic sensibilities. His initial capture had been a comedy of errors, a series of escalating misunderstandings that culminated in his detainment. He had violated countless regulations, disregarded established protocols, and generally behaved in a manner that suggested he was either profoundly stupid or subtly subversive. The tribunal had yet to decide which was more likely. The charges against him were numerous and varied, a testament to his apparent inability to grasp even the most basic tenets of Zargonian society. He had trespassed in restricted zones, tampered with sensitive equipment, and generally caused a level of disruption that threatened to throw the entire tribunal into disarray. But it was his attitude that truly perplexed the Zargonians. He seemed utterly unconcerned by the gravity of his situation. He offered no apologies, expressed no remorse, and showed no signs of fear. It was as if he was completely immune to the tribunal's authority. The Grand Explicator, observing from his elevated dais, felt a flicker of something he rarely experienced: unease. He had dealt with countless criminals, rebels, and malcontents, but none had ever displayed such a complete lack of respect for the Zargonian system. Perhaps, the Explicator mused, this human was more dangerous than he appeared. Perhaps his incompetence was a carefully crafted facade, a smokescreen designed to conceal a more sinister purpose. The thought sent a ripple of disquiet through the tribunal chambers. As Harold Finch continued to nonchalantly observe his surroundings, the Zargonians grappled with a disturbing realization. They had absolutely no idea what to make of him. And that, in itself, was a threat to their meticulously ordered world. The human's presence was a glitch in the system, a variable they couldn't control, and the Zargonian Tribunal was about to learn just how disruptive a single, laid-back human could be. The first offense, deemed particularly egregious, involved the purification pools. These weren't just any pools. They were meticulously maintained reservoirs of ultra-sterile water used for ritual cleansing before entering sacred Zargonian sites. To Harold, they simply looked like inviting bodies of water on a hot, humid day. He'd apparently stripped, down to his aforementioned offensive shorts, and taken a refreshing dip, splashing about with an abandon that horrified the attending Zargonians. He'd even attempted to do a handstand, kicking up sediment and disrupting the delicate chemical balance of the pool. When confronted, he'd simply grinned and declared the water remarkably invigorating, as if he'd just discovered the galaxy's best spa. The Zargonians, whose cleansing rituals involved carefully calibrated sonic vibrations and precisely measured doses of purifying enzymes, were aghast. The idea of using the pools for recreation was not only sacrilegious, but utterly incomprehensible. The incident triggered a Level 7 biohazard alert and required a full-scale purification procedure, costing the tribunal a significant amount of valuable resources. Then there was the matter of currency. Upon arriving at the Zargonian spaceport, Harold had attempted to pay his docking fees with a wad of Earth dollars, crumpled and stained with what appeared to be coffee. He'd presented the bills with a flourish, as if offering a king's ransom. The Zargonians, whose economy was based on the precise calculation of bioenergy credits and the flawless execution of complex mathematical equations, stared at the paper rectangles in utter bewilderment. They had no concept of paper money, let alone the abstract notion of representing value with arbitrary symbols. The Port Authority immediately flagged the currency as unidentifiable organic waste and initiated a containment protocol. Harold, unfazed, had then attempted to barter, offering a genuine Earth artifact in exchange for passage. The artifact turned out to be a slightly used harmonica. He even tried to play it, producing a series of discordant wheezes that sent several sensitive Zargonian officials scrambling for sonic dampeners. But perhaps the most persistent and baffling of Harold's requests was for tea. He asked for it constantly, at all hours, in every conceivable situation. He asked for it during interrogations, during processing, and even during a rather delicate negotiation regarding the return of a stolen algae farm. The Zargonians had no equivalent beverage. Their sustenance came in the form of nutrient-rich plankton paste and synthesized amino acid cocktails. The concept of steeping dried leaves in hot water to create a flavored drink was utterly alien to them. They ran countless simulations, analyzed the chemical composition of various teas he described, and consulted with their leading xenobotanists. The results were always the same: incomprehension. Tea, according to their analysis, was a completely inefficient and illogical method of hydration. It provided minimal nutritional value, required excessive energy to prepare, and served no discernible purpose. Yet Harold persisted. He described various types of tea with a passion that bordered on obsession: Earl Grey, chamomile, green tea, black tea, iced tea, sweet tea. He even attempted to demonstrate the proper brewing technique, using a confiscated laboratory beaker and a smuggled bag of Earl Grey. The Zargonians, increasingly frustrated, began to suspect that tea was some kind of code, a subtle form of communication designed to undermine their authority. They analyzed his every utterance, searching for hidden meanings and subversive messages. But all they found was a genuine, unwavering craving for a hot beverage they couldn't understand. The request for tea became a symbol of Harold's alienness, a constant reminder of the vast gulf that separated human and Zargonian culture. It was a small thing, perhaps, but it drove them absolutely mad. High Inquisitor Zargon, a being whose multifaceted eyes had witnessed millennia of Zargonian jurisprudence, now swiveled with a growing unease. Something about Harold Finch didn't quite compute. The human's supposed blunders, initially dismissed as mere alien ignorance, began to coalesce into a disquieting pattern. Could such profound incompetence truly be accidental? Zargon summoned his most trusted aides to his private observation chamber, a stark, dimly lit space where holographic projections of past transgressions flickered across the walls. "Review the Finch file," he commanded, his voice a low thrum that resonated through the chamber. "Again, every infraction, every quirk. I want a complete behavioral analysis by dawn." The aides, a cluster of nervous, bioluminescent Zargonians, immediately set to work, their appendages clicking across their data consoles. Hours blurred into a frenzy of cross-referencing, statistical modeling, and psychological extrapolation. The data painted a picture of a being utterly incompatible with Zargonian society. But Zargon sensed something deeper, a discordant note in the symphony of incompetence. The purification pools, the currency debacle, the incessant demands for tea. Zargon mused, pacing the chamber, his tendrils twitching. Individually, these could be dismissed as mere cultural misunderstandings, but taken as a whole, it suggests a deliberate orchestration. He paused, his gaze hardening. What if Finch's incompetence is a carefully constructed facade, a smokescreen to mask a more sinister intent? One of the aides, a particularly obsequious Zargonian named Gleepglorp, dared to voice his apprehension. "But, High Inquisitor, the data clearly indicates a severe cognitive deficit. The probability of Finch possessing the intellect required to orchestrate such a complex deception is astronomically low." Zargon silenced him with a flick of his tentacle. "Probability is a tool of prediction, Gleepglorp, not a shackle on imagination. Consider the possibility that we are dealing with a level of guile beyond our comprehension." Zargon theorized that Harold's mistakes weren't random acts of stupidity, but calculated disruptions aimed at undermining the very foundations of the tribunal. Perhaps the tea was a biological weapon, subtly altering the Zargonians' cognitive functions. Maybe the harmonica's discordant melodies contained subliminal messages designed to induce societal unrest. The possibilities, however far-fetched, were chilling. "I propose a radical hypothesis," Zargon announced, his voice resonating with newfound conviction. "Finch is not merely an ignorant alien. He is a saboteur, an agent provocateur, a pawn in a larger game." He turned to his aides, his multifaceted eyes gleaming with a mixture of fear and determination. "I believe Harold Finch is part of a human conspiracy to dismantle Zargonian society." The aides gasped, their bioluminescence flickering erratically. The idea was ludicrous, bordering on treasonous. To suggest that the mighty Zargonian Tribunal, the embodiment of order and efficiency, could be threatened by a single bumbling human was an affront to their very existence. Yet they dared not question the High Inquisitor's judgment. "Increase security protocols," Zargon commanded. Isolate Finch, and prepare for enhanced interrogation. We will unearth the truth, no matter how deeply buried it may be. We will expose this human conspiracy and crush it before it can take root. The fate of the Zargonian Tribunal, and perhaps the entire Zargonian civilization, now rested on unraveling the enigma that was Harold Finch. The interrogation chamber was a study in aquatic minimalism, smooth obsidian walls pulsating with a faint internal luminescence. Restraining clamps designed for beings of various tentacled, finned, or scaled anatomies gleamed ominously. Harold Finch sat reclined in the central chair, looking utterly bored. He was idly humming a tuneless melody, his eyes scanning the bizarre architecture with mild curiosity. High Inquisitor Zargon entered. His bioluminescent eyes narrowed, his presence filling the chamber with an oppressive weight. Two heavily armed Zargonian guards flanked him, their energy rifles crackling with suppressed power. Zargon approached. Harold, his voice a low, guttural rumble that echoed through the chamber. Human Finch, we have attempted diplomacy. We have extended the hand of understanding. You have responded with chaos. Harold blinked, as if startled from a daydream. Did I? Sorry, must have dozed off there for a sec. This chair's surprisingly comfy, you know? Say you wouldn't happen to have a pillow, would ya? Zargon's multifaceted eyes narrowed further, his patience wearing thin. Silence. We are here to ascertain the truth. Your repeated violations of Zargonian law cannot be dismissed as mere ignorance. You will confess your true intentions. The Inquisitor initiated the interrogation sequence. A series of high-pitched sonic waves pulsed through the chamber, frequencies designed to induce psychological stress. For a Zargonian, it was excruciating, a sonic assault on their highly sensitive auditory organs. Harold, however, seemed completely unaffected. He simply scratched his ear and yawned. Bit of a racket, isn't it? You guys into whale songs or something? Frustrated, Zargon switched to visual stimuli. Holographic projections flickered around Harold, depicting scenes of Zargonian history, culture, and law, all designed to overwhelm and disorient. Images of the Great Directive flashed before his eyes, interspersed with scenes of Zargonian triumphs and punishments. Harold watched with detached amusement, occasionally offering commentary. Ooh, that's a nice hat. Is that guy like the king or something? Zargon, his tendrils twitching with barely suppressed rage, decided to try a more direct approach. He gestured to one of the guards who approached Harold with a long, slender device. The device emitted a faint blue glow, and the guard positioned it near Harold's head. This is a mind probe, Zargon announced, his voice laced with menace. It will extract your deepest thoughts, your hidden motives. Resistance is futile. Harold raised an eyebrow. A mind probe, huh? Sounds kinky. The guard activated the device. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the device began to sputter and hiss, emitting a series of error messages. The guard looked at Zargon in confusion. High Inquisitor, the device is malfunctioning. It appears unable to penetrate the subject's cognitive field. Zargon stared at Harold, his multifaceted eyes filled with a mixture of disbelief and fury. Impossible. No being can resist the mind probe. What are you? Harold grinned, a disarming, almost innocent expression on his face. Just a regular guy, doing my best to understand all this stuff. Though I gotta say, your technology is kinda clunky. You wouldn't happen to have any tea, would you? This whole ordeal is making me parched. High Inquisitor Zargon, now bordering on desperation, signaled to the guards. They moved with practiced precision, unsealing a large, cylindrical chamber at the far end of the interrogation room. The chamber hissed open, revealing a device of immense size and foreboding design, the Zargonian Dissolver. The Dissolver was a construct of polished obsidian and shimmering opalescent alloys. Intricate networks of glowing tubes crisscrossed its surface, pulsing with contained energy. It hummed with a deep, resonant frequency that vibrated through the very floor of the chamber, inspiring a sense of awe and dread in any Zargonian who beheld it. This was no mere tool. It was a symbol of Zargonian justice, a testament to their unwavering commitment to order. Legends whispered that the dissolver could unravel the very fabric of a being's existence, reducing the most hardened criminal to their constituent atoms. It was the ultimate deterrent, reserved for only the most heinous of crimes, those that threatened the very foundation of Zargonian society. Its activation was a spectacle, a solemn declaration of unwavering resolve. The High Inquisitor approached the dissolver, his movements deliberate and ceremonial. He placed his hand upon its cool surface, his bioluminescent eyes glowing with righteous fervor. "Harold Finch," he announced, his voice echoing through the chamber, "you have defied the tribunal, mocked our laws, and threatened the very stability of our civilization. Now you will face the consequences." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "The dissolver will extract the truth from you. It will unravel your deceit and reveal your true intentions. Prepare yourself." But Zargon was not aware of the true nature of the dissolver. Generations of Zargonians had revered it, feared it, without ever truly understanding it. Its original purpose, lost to the mists of time, had been misinterpreted, twisted into a symbol of fear. The reality was far more pedestrian. He turned to the control panel, his tendrils poised to initiate the dissolver's activation sequence. With a dramatic flourish, he pressed the activation rune. The machine whirred to life, the pulsing lights intensifying. The air crackled with anticipation. The moment of truth had arrived. Harold Finch would finally be broken. The Zargonian High Inquisitor was certain of it. The dissolver whirred, hissed, and then with an anticlimactic plunk, extended a small nozzle. From this nozzle, instead of a beam of pure energy or a swirling vortex of oblivion, dripped a small amount of liquid. The liquid was a vibrant, almost unnatural shade of blue. It fizzed slightly, releasing tiny bubbles that popped with a delicate sugary scent. The horror dawned on a junior technician first. He gasped, a strangled sound lost in the hum of the machine. Then, the High Inquisitor's bioluminescent eyes widened in dawning comprehension and utter disbelief. The dissolver, revered for generations as the ultimate instrument of Zargonian justice, was in fact a device that dispensed a slightly fizzy, excessively sugary drink. It was the Zargonian equivalent of, well, a calming beverage. A space soda, if you will, a cosmic cola. The air in the chamber hung thick with stunned silence. Harold Finch, still strapped to the interrogation chair, watched the dripping blue liquid with mild interest. He craned his neck, squinting slightly. "Is that blue raspberry?" he asked, his voice cutting through the silence. "I'm not a huge fan, to be honest. Do you guys have like a cherry flavor? Or maybe root beer?" The High Inquisitor's tendrils trembled. The implications were staggering. Generations of Zargonians had lived in fear of this machine, believing it capable of unimaginable destruction. Laws had been written, civilizations judged, all based on the terrifying power of flavored sugar water. Harold, oblivious to the existential crisis unfolding around him, was getting impatient. A drop of the blue liquid landed on his nose. "Seriously? Though," he persisted, "anything but blue raspberry. It's kind of harsh, you know, too artificial." The junior technician fainted. High Inquisitor Zargon, his mind reeling, could only sputter. But the great directive, the sacred texts, they spoke of dissolution." Harold shrugged, still, trying to dislodge the drop of blue goo from his nose. "Well, yeah," he said with a shrug. "Sugar dissolves in water, right? Maybe that's what they meant. Look, are you going to offer me a drink or what? This chair's not exactly comfortable and I'm parched." He then looked directly at the High Inquisitor, a glint of mischievous curiosity in his eyes. "Say, does this thing have an off button? I wouldn't want to waste any of your, calming beverage." The horror on the Inquisitor's face was, for Harold, the highlight of his day. He almost felt sorry for the poor, shell-shocked alien. Almost. The revelation hit the Zargonian Tribunal like a rogue asteroid. Their meticulously ordered society, their rigid legal system, their very understanding of the universe, was suddenly fizzy. The High Inquisitor, his tendrils now resembling tangled seaweed, stared blankly at the dissolver, his bioluminescent eyes flickering erratically. Harold, sensing an opportunity, pressed his case. So, about that cherry flavor? Or, hey, you know what would be amazing? A lemon lime. Nice and tart, to cut through all this existential dread you guys seem to be experiencing. Chaos erupted. Junior technicians began questioning their life choices. Senior adjudicators started re-evaluating millennia of Zargonian jurisprudence. The Great Directive, once a sacred guiding principle, was now being hastily rewritten on holographic notepads, with suggestions ranging from embrace the fizz to mandatory blue raspberry ban. Harold, meanwhile, was working on his own modifications. He managed to wiggle his hand free just enough to reach the dissolver's control panel. He mused, poking at a series of glowing buttons. Maybe I can get this thing to dispense ice cubes. This stuff is good, but it could be colder. With a final, triumphant jab, he pressed a large, pulsating button. The dissolver shuddered, whirred even louder, and then, with a satisfying thunk, began dispensing not only flavored sugar water, but also tiny, perfectly formed ice spheres. The Zargonian Tribunal, their foundations utterly shattered, watched in horrified fascination as Harold Finch, the human who refused to surrender, casually dismantled their entire civilization, one refreshing beverage at a time. The age of Zargonian justice was over. The age of intergalactic mixology had begun.